Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you who may not be in our time zone here. I'm speaking to you from Nashville, Tennessee, in the southeast of the US, and understand how important it is for us to see as a stream that will be in our website, our Facebook, that we may not have everyone listening to this at the same time. So, just to recap, we have our book club. Our book club is focusing right now on the book by Joanna de Angelis, our spiritual author, that was written, psychographed by Divaldo Franco. Its title is Wake Up and Be Happy. So let us wake up and be happy. And this book, just to remind everyone, it is part of the psychological series written by Joanna. The series has 16 books. And specifically from a numerical perspective, this is book number 8. So, what has happened to us? Well, we want to today spend the next 30 minutes doing a recap of a couple of chapters before we start our study today. And my proposal is if we don't have time, we continue that recap, our discussion next week, next Sunday. So, with that, let's try to go to the next slide. And as you can see here, the topic of a couple of Sundays ago was chapter 6, Undue Complaints. And it specifically talked about three larger topics. Okay, so the macro topic is complaining. We all know about complaining, but it goes on into those three themes, which is what a waste of time it is to complain. And we're going to dive into why it is a waste of time. The idea of reincarnation. And finally, we end with a sense of we are exactly where we need to be. So let's go ahead and get started with the next slide, which focuses on the sense of waste of time. And it's really important for me to talk about here in the sense of what a waste of time, right? What am I talking about? What did Joanna de Angeli talk about here? Is that the question is complaining a waste of time, right? So because we know where we were, right? Because we need to know that where we were in our past and understand from a timeline of our lives, right? So knowing where we were in the past and where we are today will make an enormous difference, as we all know, about what we're going through, and if indeed complaining would be that sense of a waste of time. So we're going to spend a little bit of just a couple of minutes, I hope, and I say I hope because I'm not so sure I can cover all the material today. So I ask in advance for your tolerance, because if we don't, we just move on to the next week, continue this recap. All right. But it's important that that notion of a timeline comes with a sense, and it's really important, right? That there is life and there is another life and there is another life. So there is a continuum from a life after life, or in other words, the concept of reincarnation. And I just wanted to stop here to make reference to the Gospel according to Spiritism, chapter 4, right? And the chapter 4 speaks about the titles is except a man be born again, he cannot see the kingdom of heaven. And in that chapter, reincarnation is really well discussed. It's well woven into the content of that chapter. And if we can say in just a few words, what is reincarnation? Reincarnation is the return of our soul. What is a soul? It is simply a spirit that it has a body, right? It's an incarnated spirit. So the return of our soul uh, to physical life in another body. So today I am Marcia, that's my name, and I have a soul and I have a life in our material world, on earth at 2022. Upon my disincarnation, I will go back to the spiritual realm, the spiritual dimension. And when I return as a soul to another life, my name may be Marcia, or maybe Maria, maybe uh, Martha, whatever, M, and I'm just kidding here, right? I will have my soul will come back, right, to have this corporeal life, but I will have a different body, and that body is newly formed to welcome my spirit. Hope it makes sense to everyone. If you don't believe in reincarnation, it's quite complicated, right? It's quite complex for us to understand. But it's super, super, super important to understand that this, not just a concept, an abstract concept, but the idea of reincarnation is both a gift, it is also an imperative for us to grow and to evolve. So I want us to remember the word grow and evolve, right? Which means progress. We're going to talk about it later on chapter 8 about that. But there's another point that I would like to bring here, which is the sense or the notion that we are, right? If we believe in reincarnation, we also must believe that that we who we are, and we are immortal spirits, but we are immortal spirits that have to face the fact that we currently live in a material life. Some people may call it a corporeal existence, but it's life with a material aspect to it. So we have this body that for many may feel, and this is important for us to think a little bit about it. For many, it may feel like actually like a prison. And our time in prison, right, our life, when it ends, we return to our real life, which is our spiritual life. We, as immortal spirits, right, we live a spiritual and a material dimension. So when we return to a spiritual life, we are returning to our real life. And when we do that, it will be lived without any of the constraints, any of the limitations that we have when we are in this physical life, this corporeal existence, as I mentioned. So, moving on, right? As we return home, the idea, we transcend those constraints of our material life. And as we are freed from those constraints, we start to fully connect with the desire, the and I say a desire, capital letters, desire, the desire to grow, the want, the impetus to learn, to evolve. Again, that notion of progress, right? And that desire is really to get to the ultimate goal of perfect happiness. This concept simply means that when we forget this desire, right, as we come to another corporeal existence, right? We also somehow it dims in us, intuitively speaking or not, what is required for us to reach that perfect state of happiness. So it's really a dichotomy here. On one hand, as we return to our real life, our spiritual life, we are awakened to that deep, deep desire that actually means that we want to be perfectly happy, right? That's the desire. And on one hand, in the corporeal existence, in our material life, we are we dim that sense of this desire because we're immersed in a different dimension that becomes it heightens our sense of we want to live and address all the requirements of that material dimension. So back to the codification of spiritism by Allan Kardec. Chapter 6 of the Spirits book, it has a discussion on the memory, right? Because I'm talking here that we lose that sense of awareness or remembrance. So in the chapter 6 of the Spirits book, memory of physical life is the topic, tells us a detailed actually information about this process, the process of reconnecting and the process as we disincarnate to remember our life or even our past lives as we need to, right? So as you read through several of questions, including questions 258 and 262 earlier in the book, it tells us about, and this is really cool, it tells about the connection between my freedom, right, which is exercised by my free will on one hand, and my um, planning, if you will, by exercising those choices on when I plan for my future life, my future incarnation. And this is really, really interesting to me because it explains so much. So if you too are interested, I highly recommend that you read the book by spiritual author Andrea Louise, specifically the book Evolution in Two Worlds, where Andrea Louise, the spiritual author, through the mediumship of Chico Xavier, it talks about the two worlds. What are they? The spiritual world and the material world. Super cool. Chapter 19 of that book specifically gives us a detailed account of what that planning process looks like. And for all of you who are skeptics, please take a moment to read chapter 19 of Evolution to Worlds to come to those explanations and see if it makes more sense to you. But you you have to grasp, right, with that notion. We It's time to come back. It's time to live our next incarnation, our next life, as I mentioned. And we are faced with the sense of the notion that our memory of those goals, those aspirations, or those plans start to fade. And we unfortunately sometimes completely forget. We get so immersed in our lives that we forget. I Just as a parenthesis, I was watching a documentary just a couple of days ago where this young woman, I'm not going to say her name, but she's wildly successful, and she talks about, now that she has reached the goal, she talks about going and having the goal because of her parents to go to college, but her aspirational goals was to be an artist. And as she gets through high school, she completely forgets her goals and her aspirational goals. She does not go to college. She does not do anything because her immediate goal becomes now How do I survive on my own? I left home. I need to make money. And that changed or detoured her for many years until she came to, by accident, and I do air quote here because we know there is no accident, to the sense of meeting her aspirational goals and indeed becoming quite famous artist. So, anyways, it's very similar in that in how we live our spiritual and material lives. I pause here to ask to for your agreement because I believe you probably will agree with me that without that aspirational goal being totally imprinted in our internally, right? And if we live a life that perhaps it's on based, which is all of us, based on the ideals, the values, right, that are cultured, that are created, that are based, that are formed on what? Temporal values, ephemeral values. And as such, they will reflect perhaps, oh, the latest fashion, the latest influencer. I call the influencer du jour, the latest top career, right? And you have to think about it. Oh, I am not so young, and in my youth, and I'm talking about when I was maybe 20 or even before that, the my North Star, right? My goals were very different than, for example, the younger generation who are in their 20s right now, and they face different types of aspirations that I did. And those are all material aspirations, by the way. So they are temporal, they are based on a time period, they are ephemeral as well, right? But when we live that life that is fulfilled with goals that are, as I said, just they are fleeting. They're based on not real value, and by that I mean not based on our deep desire that we had in our plan for our incarnations. We may just start to complain. Oh, we're back to the topic of discussion, right? We complain. We ask, why do I have to do this, right? I remember so many young children said, why do I have to learn math? I will never use that. Do you remember that? Maybe you said that yourself. Why do I have to dress this way? Why do I have to go to this school? Why do I have to eat this? Why this? Why that? Or another sense of complaining, right? Oh, not fair. You have this life that I consider privileged because my life is full of hurt. It's not fair. It's not right. We all have said that, even if we said that only in our minds. And, if you start thinking about it, it is so and so, let's say, is healthier, richer, luckier, more powerful, more intelligent, more beautiful. Oh my goodness. So on and so forth. We find ways to compare ourselves with a reality that is material only, it's fleeting, and we complain because we want to be in the easier, more privileged, faster, luckier, more powerful, whatever the more is, more positive is, versus what we are. And that's what Joanna de Angelis says. This is a waste of time, a waste of time. Yet it is part of our human experience. It's part of that forever sense of dissatisfaction. We would call it actually a lack of competency. If you think this from the perspective of being an immortal soul, we should be able to understand those things and not complain, right? But it is our human nature to be dissatisfied and to complain, especially if we forget our transcendental goals. If we were to put perhaps this notion of undue complaining in a different context, we could say uh, if we are a child, it's really excessive or inappropriate sense of complaining to complain that you don't behave like an adult, right? And vice versa. You're an adult, you have a family, and oh, you're complaining that you cannot, like a baby, right, spend the day just doing nothing, napping and eating and crying if you don't get what you want. Different, inappropriate. And that's the idea here. Undue complaint, it seems, it simply is complaining for something that is disproportionate, inappropriate to you. So think in terms of all that Jesus has taught us. And even then, over 2,000 years ago, he was already talking about that unwarranted complaining when we do that regarding the challenges of life that are simply part of our existence. So I want you to think about it and put focus or emphasis in this idea. The struggles of life, the challenges of living are simply part of the process. Okay? So, Joanna de Angelis recommends in this chapter, it's a beautiful chapter. I really would love for you to take a moment to read it. She talks about the notion that the best way to live life and not complain, not waste time, is to stay in touch with all that is sacred. She suggests that we maybe immerse ourselves with the teachings of love, of mercy, of faith, right? That Jesus brought to us. They will shed light to the path. And Jesus did remind us, right? Every time he spoke, he reminded us of that. Oh, the divine mercy, the divine love exists everywhere, in everything, in all of our lives. So I want us to move on to the next slide when we talk about now about reincarnation. And it may be the last thing I talk today, so I will continue this conversation next week if it's okay with all of you. But the reason I say that is because the back to discussing reincarnation is so important to frame us in everything that we do. So we started today's discussion with the notion that we are immortal souls, right? As such, we have a life and then another life, and it will be a life before the one we're living. There will be a life after this one that we're living. And living not a material life, not living a material life, living a material life, etc., etc. We understand to accomplish this, we depend, right, on the cycle will lead us to really depend to this material life for everything. That remembering that young artist that I just saw the documentary, right? That dependency to survive in a material context that she was referring to, it dimmed everything else, all her desires, her goals. And that material life is what is we're going to be talking a little bit in this chapter today. In between incarnations, in between material lives or corporeal existence, we regain consciousness. right? We even see it as our lucid remembrance. We become super aware, as I mentioned before, of our aspirational goals, and we also awaken that amazing desire to grow, to progress, and to go through our long existence, which is really about growth. It is about personal redemption. It is also about co creation of life, right? So it's a beautiful journey. We acknowledge in between material lives, right? As we regain that lucid consciousness, we acknowledge our failures, we confront our shortcomings, we understand at that moment that to grow, we must go through this, and I'm going to call it a sort of, right, because it's my, those are my words, this sort of school, this training of our spirit. And that's when Joanna reminds us of the importance of meditation when we feel out of sorts, out of bounds. We don't understand what's going on. If we want to attain to our aspirational goals, right? If we want to also take this lifetime to redeem against anything that we may have done in the past, we we should be attuned to how to do this the best way possible. And what I mean by that is how to confront our challenges. And challenges, I'm going to use as the broadest sense of the word. Any challenge that comes to us, we must be attuned to how to do it well. So it is really, really important for us to know that, surprise, surprise, we designed this life, this material life, as much as a metaphor, we design our curriculum, right? We design when we want to go to college. I want to be a doctor. Well, what type of doctor? What are the disciplines? And that may be a bad example, by the way. But we say we want to be X professional, and we then go into training to a school, but we design when we're going to study, how much we're going to study with that aspirational goal to be that professional, right? And in life, as we're planning, sometimes we beg to go through what many can see as afflictions, tests of our own strength, right? And maybe in form of disease, it may be form of a feeling of betrayal, feeling of hurt. And it's important to know as a learner in this school of life, right? We are very vulnerable, but we are very plastic, we're very moldable. So while it feels like we want to learn and it's hard to learn, we learn, and we learn through whatever event, through happy tears of joy or unhappy tears of pain. And I say that and I stop to say, what do you mean happy tears of joy or unhappy tears of pain, right? Yeah. Sadly, we somehow go faster in our progress through life to attain our aspiration goals through pain. And while our mentors, our benefactors, spirits of light are here to help us with this design, we are often very, very aggressive. We want to accomplish more because we have, remember, that desire to accomplish, to reach that perfect happiness. And usually I will say, oh, I got this. We can do this. And the fact is, we don't got this. All right. So, in any case, when we are in this life, we do have, like we have our parents, we have our mentors, our spiritual mentors that are here to help us because they are aware of our plan, they are aware of the vulnerability of our brain, and they're aware also with the need to execute on those plans. But let's go to the final slide for today, and I think we're going to continue this next week if it's okay with everyone. But just to finalize in a couple of minutes, the notion of undue complaint is counterbalanced with the idea that you and me, we are exactly where we need to be. Right, and that seems that it's a sense of I love the idea that if we were to sail across oceans, right, and we say, and I'm not a sailor by the way, but real quickly, I'm going to sail from the east coast of the U.S. into the west coast of say Europe, and I'm going to get in my sailboat, and I have to prepare for the course, right? Where I'm going to go. But I also have to be mentally and physically prepared to face stormy weather as they may or may not come, high waves, low waves, whatever that journey may be. And if we want to attain our perfect happiness, just like I want to attain this Western port in Western Europe, we need to learn that we need to be prepared and we need to be able to execute and also understand that we don't live alone. There are many, many things in our external lives that will perhaps detour us like a wave or a tide, right? And usually that come in terms of people that will provoke a deep reaction around us. When we are going well in our journey, we may provoke a reaction to those around us, such as jealousy, and that jealousy may provoke, oh, I don't know, behaviors like, oh, malicious gossip or even cheating or even, putting you down, creating I don't know, defamation, creating rumors about you that, oh, she's doing so well because, right? And it's really, really difficult, more difficult than ever when we have our goal and we are accomplishing, we are meeting our goals, and it took a lot of preparation, it took a lot of strength, it took a lot of discipline, and yet people are speaking terrible things or doing terrible things to you. And Joanna says, do not complain. What? Yeah, do not complain. They may do all that they're doing to you. Be simply thankful. Thankful to all the opportunities, including the opportunity to cry. If everything, as hard as it is augmented, the difficulties are augmented by external factors trying to get you out of your goal, including those people closest to you, do not complain and cry because it may be hard, but do not complain. Be grateful. When we are face to face to our death, all of us will, right? Our material death, we will wake up and we will assess all that we have done, all that we have failed to do, and all that we complained about. So let's think about as I part today with the sense that complaining is just a reflection of our lack of being in tune to our aspirational goals. It's a reflection of how ungrateful we are And we should always be grateful because God is with us, and His infinite mercy, His infinite love is holding us together, right? And we should instead move forward and remember even Jesus, who was the most perfect, pure spirit that walked on earth, was attacked by so many. He faced sarcasm, he faced betrayal. He taught us yet that true love, and we talk about love, you know, macro, true love is patient. True love is tolerant. True love is understanding. And true love never complains because we are exactly where we need to be. So, with that, I will continue with our recap next week and hope to bring to you a discussion on the three enemies. You heard it, the three enemies. Thank you so very much. It was nice being here with you. Bye.